Hello, Gino here, and you are listening to Otherworld Connections. We live in a critical time where now, more than ever, angels and fairies, hidden forces, are bursting at the seams of the veil to work with us. They want to see us change in order to save the world and live in service to others. So join me on a journey to empowerment and enlightenment with an angelic angle and a fairy focus, looking into ways to improve our current situation, morality, archetypes, solutions for self-healing, and spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions.
Hello. Welcome to Westside Connections. Other World Connections. Hey, so today we're going back into fairy tales because they are going really well, in my humble opinion. And we found the meanings behind another fairy tale for you, Snowdrop. And that's actually going to take up a lot of the show, so buckle up. It's going to be a long one, a long story. This one's called Snowdrop. It's a Brothers Grimm fairy tale. Very familiar themes in it, you will see. Let's go. Once upon a time, in the middle of winter, when the snowflakes were falling like feathers, on the earth a queen sat at a window framed in black and ebony and sewed. And as she sewed and gazed out to the white landscape, she pricked her finger with the needle, and 3 drops of blood fell on the snow outside. And because the red showed out so well against the white, she thought to herself, "Oh, what wouldn't I give to have a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony?" And her wish was granted, for not long after, a little daughter was born to her, with a skin as white as snow, lips and cheeks as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. They called her Snowdrop, and not long after her birth, the queen died. After a year, the king married again. His new wife was a beautiful woman, but so proud and overbearing that she couldn't stand any rival to her beauty. She possessed a magic mirror, and when she used to stand before it, gazing at her own reflection and ask, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land's most fair?" it always replied, "You are most fair, my lady queen. None fairer in the land, I ween." Then she was quite happy, for she knew the mirror always spoke the truth. But Snowdrop was growing prettier and prettier every day, and when she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as she could be, and fairer even than the queen herself. One day, when the latter asked her mirror the usual question, it replied, "My lady queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snowdrop is fairer far than you." Then the queen flew into the most awful passion and turned every shade of green in her jealousy. From this hour, she hated poor Snowdrop like poison, and every day her envy, hatred, and malice grew. For envy and jealousy are like evil weeds which spring up and choke the heart. At last, she could endure Snowdrop's presence no longer, and, calling a huntsman to her, she said, "Take the child out into the wood and never let me see her face again. You must kill her and bring me back her lungs and liver, that I may know for certain she is dead." The huntsman did as he was told and led Snowdrop out into the wood. But as he was in the act of drawing out his knife to slay her, she began to cry and said, "Oh, dear huntsman, spare my life, and I will promise to fly forth into the wide wood and never to return home again." And because she was so young and pretty, the huntsman had pity on her and said, "Well, Run along, poor child, for he thought to himself, the wild beasts will soon eat her up. And his heart felt lighter because he hadn't had to do the deed himself. And as he turned away, a young boar came running past, so he shot it and brought its lungs and liver home to the queen as a proof that Snowdrop was really dead. And the wicked woman had them stewed in salt and ate them up, thinking she had made an end of Snowdrop forever. Now, when the poor child found herself alone in the big wood, the very trees around her seemed to assume strange shapes, and she felt so frightened she didn't know what to do. Then she began to run over the sharp stones and through the bramble bushes, and the wild beasts ran past her, but they did her no harm. She ran as far as her legs would carry her, and as evening approached, she saw a little house, and she stepped inside to rest. Everything was very small in the little house, but cleaner and neater than anything you can imagine. In the middle of the room there stood a little table covered with a white tablecloth, and 7 little plates and forks and spoons and knives and tumblers. Side by side against the wall there were 7 little beds covered with snow-white counterpanes. Snowdrop felt so hungry and thirsty that she ate a bit of bread and a little porridge from each plate, and drank a drop of wine out of each tumbler. Then, feeling tired and sleepy, she lay down on one of the beds, but it wasn't comfortable. Then she tried all the others in turn, but one was too long and another too short, and it was only when she got to the 7th that she found one to suit her exactly. So she lay down upon it, said her prayers like a good child, and fell fast asleep. When it got quite dark, the masters of the house returned. They were 7 dwarves who worked in the mines right down deep in the heart of the mountain. They lighted their 7 little lamps, and as soon as their eyes got accustomed to the glare, they saw that someone had been in the room, for all was not in the same order as they had left it. The first said, "Who's been sitting in my little chair?" The second said, "Who's been eating my little loaf?" The third said, "Who's been tasting my porridge?" The fourth said, "Who's been eating out of my little plate?" The fifth said, "Who's been using my little fork?" The sixth said, "Who's been cutting with my little knife?" The 7th said, "Who's been drinking out of my little tumbler?" Then the first dwarf looked around and saw a little hollow in his bed, and he asked again, "Who's been lying on my bed?" The others came running around and cried when they saw their beds, "Somebody has lain on ours too." But when the 7th came to his bed, he started back in amazement, for there he beheld Snowdrop fast asleep. Then he called the others, who turned their little lamps full on the bed, and when they saw Snowdrop lying there, they nearly fell down with surprise. "Goodness gracious," they cried, "what a beautiful child!" And they were so enchanted by her beauty that they did not wake her, but let her sleep on in the little bed. But the 7th dwarf slept with his companions 1 hour in each bed, and in this way he managed to pass the night. In the morning, Snowdrop awoke, but when she saw the 7 little dwarfs, she felt very frightened. But they were so friendly and asked her what her name was in such a kind way that she replied, "I am Snowdrop." "Why did you come to our house?" continued the dwarves. Then she told them how her stepmother had wished her put to death, and how the huntsman had spared her life, and how she had run the whole day till she had come to their little house. The dwarves, when they had heard her story, asked her, "Will you stay and keep house for us, cook, make the beds, do the washing, sew and knit? And if you give satisfaction and keep everything neat and clean, you shall want for nothing." "Yes," answered Snowdrop, "I will gladly do all you ask." And so she took up her abode with them. Every morning the dwarfs went into the mountain to dig for gold, and in the evening, when they returned home, Snowdrop always had their supper ready for them. But during the day the girl was left quite alone, so the good dwarfs warned her, saying, "Beware of your stepmother. She will soon find out you are here, and whatever you do, Don't let anyone into the house." Now the queen, after she thought she had eaten Snowdrop's lungs and liver, never dreamed but that she was once more the most beautiful woman in the world. So stepping before her mirror one day, she said, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land is most fair?" And the mirror replied, "My lady queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snowdrop is fairer far than you. Snowdrop, who dwells with the 7 little men, is as fair as you, as fair again." When the queen heard these words, she was nearly struck dumb with horror, for the mirror always spoke the truth, and she knew now that the huntsman must have deceived her, and that Snowdrop was still alive. She pondered one day and night how she might destroy her, for as long as she felt she had a rival in the land, her jealous heart left her no rest. At last she hit upon a plan. She stained her face and dressed herself up as an old peddler wife, so that she was quite unrecognizable. In this guise she went over the 7 hills till she came to the house of the 7 dwarfs. There she knocked at the door, calling out at the same time, "Fine wares to sell, fine wares to sell." Snowdrop peeped out of the window and called out, "Good day, mother, what have you to sell?" "Good wares, fine wares," she answered, "laces of every shade and description." And she held one up that was made of some gay-coloured silk. "Surely I can let the honest woman in," thought Snowdrop. So she unbarred the door and bought the pretty lace. "Good gracious, child," said the woman, "what a figure you've got! Come, I'll lace you up properly for once." Snowdrop, suspecting no evil, stood before her and let her lace her bodice up. But the old woman laced her so quickly and tightly that it took Snowdrop's breath away, and she fell down dead. "Now you are no longer the fairest," said the wicked old woman, and then she hastened away. In the evening the 7 dwarfs came home, and you may think what a fright they got when they saw their dear Snowdrop lying on the floor, as still and motionless as a dead person. They lifted her up tenderly, and when they saw how tightly laced she was, they cut the lace into 2, and she began to breathe a little and gradually came back to life. When the dwarfs heard what had happened, they said, "Depend upon it, the old peddler wife was none other than the old queen. In future you must be sure to let no one in if we are not at home." As soon as the wicked old queen got home, she went straight to her mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land's most fair?" And the mirror answered as before, "My lady queen. You are fair, 'tis true, but Snowdrop is fairer far than you. Snowdrop, who dwells with the 7 little men, is as fair as you, as fair again." When she heard this, she became as pale as death, because she saw that once Snowdrop must be alive again. This time, she said to herself, "I will think of something that will make an end of her once and for all." And by the witchcraft which she understood so well, she made a poisonous comb. Then she dressed herself up and assumed the form of another old woman. So she went over the 7 hills till she reached the house of the 7 dwarves. And knocking at the door, she called out, "Fine wares for sale." Snowdrop looked out of the window and said, "You must go away, for I may not let anyone in." "But surely you are not forbidden to look out," said the old woman, and she held up the poisonous comb for her to see. It pleased the girl so much that she let herself be taken in and opened the door. When they had settled their bargain, the old woman said, "Now I'll comb your hair properly for you, for once in the way." Poor Snowdrop thought no evil, but hardly the comb touched her hair that the poison worked, and she fell down unconscious. "Now, my fine lady, you're really done for this time," said the wicked woman, and she made her way home as fast as she could. Fortunately, it was now near evening, and the 7 dwarfs returned home. When they saw Snowdrop lying dead on the ground, they at once suspected that her wicked stepmother had been at work again. So they searched till they found the poisonous comb, and the moment they pulled it out of her head, Snowdrop came to herself again, and told them what had happened. Then they warned her once more to be on her guard, and to open the door to no one. As soon as the queen got home, she went straight to her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land's most fair?" And it replied as before, "My lady queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snowdrop is fairer far than you. Snowdrop, who dwells with the 7 little men, is as fair as you, as fair again." When she heard these words, she literally trembled and shook with rage. "Snowdrop shall die," she cried, "yes, though it cost me my own life." Then she went to a secret little chamber, which no one knew or but herself, and there she made a poisonous apple. Outwardly it looked beautiful, white with red cheeks, so that everyone who saw it longed to eat it, but anyone who might do so would certainly die on the spot. When the apple was quite finished, she stained her face and dressed herself up as a peasant, and so she went over the 7 hills to the 7 dwarfs. She knocked at the door as usual, but Snowdrop put her head out of the window and called out, "I may not let anyone in. The 7 dwarfs have forbidden me to do so." "Are you afraid of being poisoned?" asked the old woman. "See, I will cut this apple in half. I'll eat the white cheek, and you can eat the red." But the apple was so cunningly made that only the red cheek was poisonous. Snowdrop longed to eat the tempting fruit, and when she saw that the peasant woman was eating it herself, she couldn't resist the temptation any longer, and stretching out her hand, she took the poisonous half. But hardly had the first bite passed her lips than she fell down dead on the ground. Then the eyes of the cruel queen sparkled with glee, and laughing aloud she cried, "As white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony, this time the dwarfs won't be able to bring you back to life." When she got home, she asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land's most fair?" And this time it replied, "You are most fair, my lady queen, none fairer in the land, I ween." Then her jealous heart was at rest, at least as much at rest as a jealous heart can ever be. When the little dwarfs came home in the evening, they found Snowdrop lying on the ground, and she neither breathed nor stirred. They lifted her up and looked around everywhere to see if they could find anything poisonous about. They unlaced her bodice, combed her hair, washed her with water and wine, but all in vain. The child was dead, and remained dead. Then they placed her on a bier, and all the 7 dwarfs sat round it, weeping and sobbing for 3 whole days. At last they made up their minds to bury her, but she looked as blooming as a living being, and her cheeks were still such a lovely colour that they said, "We can't hide her away in the black ground." So they had a coffin made of transparent glass, and they laid her in it, and wrote on the lid in golden letters that she was a royal princess. Then they put the coffin on the top of the mountain, and one of the dwarfs always remained beside it and kept watch over it. And the very birds of the air came and bewailed Snowdrop's death. First an owl, then a raven, and last of all a little dove. Snowdrop lay a long time in the coffin, and she always looked the same, just as if she were fast asleep. And she remained as white as snow, as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. Now it happened one day that a prince came to the wood and passed by the dwarf's house. He saw the coffin on the hill, with the beautiful Snowdrop inside it, and when he had read what was written on it in golden letters, he said to the dwarf, "Give me the coffin, I'll give you whatever you like for it." But the dwarf said, "No, we wouldn't part with it for all the gold in the world." But the dwarf, "Well then," he replied, Give it to me because I can't live without Snowdrop. I will cherish and love it as my dearest possession." He spoke so sadly that the good dwarfs had pity on him, and gave him the coffin, and the prince made his servants bear it away on their shoulders. Now it happened that as they were going down the hill, they stumbled over a bush, and jolted the coffin so violently that the poisonous bit of apple Snowdrop had swallowed fell out of her throat. She gradually opened her eyes, lifted up the lid of the coffin, and sat up alive and well. "Oh, dear me, where am I?" she cried. The prince answered joyfully, "You are with me." And he told her all that had happened, adding, "I love you better than anyone in the whole wide world. Will you come with me to my father's palace and be my wife?" Snowdrop consented, and went with him, and the marriage was celebrated with great pomp and splendor. Now Snowdrop's wicked stepmother was one of the guests invited to the wedding feast. When she had dressed herself very gorgeously for the occasion, she went with the mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land is most fair?" And the mirror answered, "My lady queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snowdrop is fairer far than you." When the wicked woman heard these words, she uttered a curse, and was beside herself with rage and mortification. At first she didn't want to go to the wedding at all, but at the same time she felt she would never be happy till she had seen the young queen. As she entered, Snowdrop recognized her, and nearly fainted with fear. But red-hot iron shoes had been prepared for the wicked old queen, and she was made to get into them and dance until she fell down dead. Alright, this is another good one. I decided to read the whole thing because, well, it's interesting. The themes or the parts of the story that we know from mashups of other stories that are fairy tales, right? These are original, or as original as can be. And I think they were changed for the wrong reasons or for ill intent because of the allegory inside the original fairy tale. That's my conspiracy theory of the day. Alright, so Snowdrop. So this is how I'm going with it. Snowdrop represents the individual, of course, having a successful life. Number 7 is the number of spirituality, mysticism, wisdom, and success. And that's what I mean by success. Living your life that you are born and that you are put here to be. Red, white, and black. Her red cheeks, her white skin, and her black hair. So red symbolizes vitality. White symbolizes innocence and purity. And black symbolizes the shadow self, the unrecognized aspects of the self, parts of ourself that we disown or are prevented from integrating in childhood. The way that we're raised, we grow up with a massive big shadow. And the black, the shadow being the hair, well, the hair represents growth, right? And also something that can be formed and cut back and integrated into the self, into an image, right? You go to the hairdresser and you get a particular type of haircut to change your look. And that's why I believe that that's what the black represents in this story. Because the shadow can't go away completely, but it can be cut back. It can be integrated. It can be worked with and used to individuate yourself, right? And so that was the key to undoing this story. And the wicked queen, the godmother, the witch figure in the story, she symbolizes knowledge, or the mechanism that leads a person to knowledge and understanding. Hidden knowledge, right? A deeper knowledge. So, yeah, in this sense, it can be, natural law. It is really a self-understanding, self-knowledge, how, psychology, how our minds work, and how, and if we know how our minds work and how we work as people, then we can grow and develop and direct ourselves to the path that we were supposed to be on. And the mirror represents spirituality. So yeah, it's the wicked queen and the mirror represent knowledge and, kind of enlightenment or a spiritual knowledge. Understanding of how the world works, how the universe works. The house, where Snowdrop ended up, represents emotional well-being. That's what the house commonly represents in dream symbology. Right, now the 7 dwarfs, there are 7 of them. Particular attention was put on the story to separating one from the 7 because Snowdrop ended up in one of their beds and one dwarf was left left separate from the other 6. So in numerology, there are different types of 7s, right? There's, other numbers like 43 is a 7 number because 4 and 3 make 7. So I also am starting to think that a lot of these stories, well, not think, but, the number 3 and the number 7 show up a lot, right? And they play around with these numbers. So they're in numerological codes in the old fairy tales. And just going by that idea is how I end up with the deeper meaning of the story. So the 7 dwarfs is a 61, 7, 6 and 1. And the 61 7 represents talents or pursuits. So 7 of these could be, say, singing, speaking, writing, performing, dancing, teaching, science. Maybe I'm reaching, but it's about pursuing. It's about expression, right? And pursuits, things that you enjoy, activities that you enjoy that are expressive. Okay? So the 7 dwarfs and that dynamic inside the house is saying that, that leads to emotional well-being. And emotional well-being and pursuing talents, expressive, arts, sciences, these kind of things are important to a successful life and integration of the self. And that's true. So that checks out, and that's what we're going with. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. And the 7 dwarfs, they failed Snowdrop. They tried to help her 3 times. And this symbolizes that your talents are wasted if you are not fully integrated, holistically developed, and done your shadow work. I tried to be a successful songwriter, musician for all of my younger years, and I was an absolute mess because I didn't follow this rule. So if only somebody read this fairy tale to me on the regular when I was a young child, and furthermore, someone that read this to me with an understanding of these principles, with an understanding of natural law, with an understanding of the human psychology, and an understanding of all those things integrated into this story. That's how it works. Hope that makes sense. The death of Snowdrop. A transformation from somewhere. Oh, well, that's like the death card, right, in the tarot. So a transformation, to be a little bit nice. Or transformation from somewhere lower to somewhere higher. So the death symbolizes that transition to her next stage of being, and in this case we're calling it the Jungian individuation or of the self, or just being successful, and successful being integrated with your thoughts and your emotions and your actions, and understanding of true spirituality, right? The wicked queen in the mirror. So that's your natural law. What the operating conditions are here on planet Earth. Understanding that. Understanding that you're looking after your emotional well-being because your emotions are important. And looking after them by having your fun time, having your recreation time, your creative work. Based on who you are and what you want to do. And your shadow work, right? Okay, so death is a transformation of lower to higher, so we're looking at it as an integration of all those things. And around the time of the death, there was the owl and the raven and the dove. And the owl represents imagination. So what I'm doing, just so you know, I am looking at, the symbolism of all these things, and seeing if an aspect of, the symbol checks out with the overall theme that I believe that the story is about in terms of the symbolism and the allegory, right? So the owl does represent the imagination, among other things that are more common. So, imagination. Raven. The raven is, in at least contemporary, if you do animal spirit guide work, if you work with the animals spiritually, the raven is used for healing from childhood trauma and painful childhood experiences. So that's what we're going with here. And the dove represents a clear vision of the future and spiritual renewal. All right, so in order to individuate, in order to heal and overcome and be successful and succeed in your dharma, you must use your imagination. You need the owl. You need to heal from your childhood trauma. You need the raven. You need a clear vision of the future. You need the dove. And pretty cool, eh? Because if you've listened to the other episodes, and if you just know, right? You know from your own work. If you've listened to the other episodes, this all checks out. It checks out. So I'm pretty stoked about this one. And meeting the prince. Well, princes and royalty definitely represent power and control. And so the prince represents having power and control over your life. Pretty cool, huh? So, that means that to individuate, to be successful, that is to do with understanding natural law, understanding, the spiritual, right? The true spiritual. And having wisdom, so knowing about things. You need to have a zest for life. You need to have a high energy. You need to have vitality. Vitality speaks of sort of everlasting persistence as well. You need to maintain innocence and purity. So that can be like a naivete. And that comes into sort of being polite and respectful, which that's just my opinion, right? So, when you meet someone, you be nice and polite, and then if they're not good people, they reveal themselves to you. So it's important to be nice. It's important to be kind. It's important to be polite, because that's the marker of good behavior. That's the marker of morality as far as I'm concerned. And that's taught in all the martial arts and the traditional ones as well. So you need that, and you need to work on your shadow self. You need to be aware of your shadow self and work with it. That's a huge one. When do we figure that out? When we're 40? After years of suffering. And the wicked queen in the mirror represent knowledge, a spiritual knowledge. So I'm just going through again. I was actually recapping, wasn't I? Excuse me. So to individuate, you need wisdom. You need high energy, persisting energy, vitality. So you need to be healthy and positive. You need to be naive and innocent and nice and lovely. You need to be aware that there's a dark side to yourself, and you need to work with that. You need your your things that you're interested in, your pursuits that are creative, that express who you are as a human being. Your writing, your speaking, your dancing. Or, other creative things like in sciences and stuff like that. And you need to do all those. And then to transform, to individuate. So you need to do all those things, and then to really individuate, you've got to heal from childhood trauma, have a clear vision of the future, and you need to have an imagination. And I'd say a strong imagination, because the owl symbolizes a type of strength there. Okay, pretty good, huh? And that is just like brief, really. There's a lot of stuff I skipped over, but I got the guts of it. So there you go. And so what's the point of all that? Well, that's the gateway segment of Otherworld Connections. God, I forget the name of my own show. The gateway segment, and it's a gateway to connecting with angels and fairies, because the angels and the fairies, to define those energies, those archetypal forces that are here to help you, absolutely love fairy tales. They absolutely love, and I'm talking about in the present day, 2024, they want us back there with the old fairy tales, reading them in the community, reading them to other people, reading them and understanding them ourselves, because they are encoded with, truth about who we are as people, truth about the world, truth about the universe. True story. So if you know any young children, get reading these stories to them, because they love it. It's fun. And if you understand the hidden meaning behind them, that's how you stand a chance to giving that knowledge. That's how you give the knowledge to the young child. That plants the seed of the true understanding of things for when they get older and they come across this information. It's magic. They are magnetized to it, and they learn about the real deal. And that's how you teach natural law and spirituality to young children. One example is reading fairy tales with an understanding of the hidden knowledge contained therein. And there were heaps of other things I was going to say, but I can't remember. And this is Gino from Otherworld Connections, and thank you for tuning into Revolution.radio. The #1 listener-supported radio station in the whole world, so please help support our efforts and airtime by visiting the station's donation section on our website, revolution.radio. Messages from the She. Right, this is my weekly tarot reading from the She. Because why? Because they told me to. They did! Okay, so this is about fate. To start on your path towards completion and wholeness, you must master the feeling of completeness and wholeness. No! I find this really hard. I know it to be true. It's Joe Dispenza, right? It's Bruce Lipton. It's that fake it till you make it. I just want to read you something regarding this, okay? And I get this stuff from weird places. From the book, Believe It, How to Go From Underestimated to Unstoppable, by Jamie Kern Lima, who is the lady who sold her It Cosmetics line to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion, dude. That's a lot of money. So now she's an Oprah Winfrey. I don't know. Most of the book's about her going on about how much she loves Oprah. But here's the thing. We are in a post-apocalyptic world. All the truth is out there. It's been unveiled. It's right there. But all our time and attention, which is the true spiritual currency, has been taken away from us. And we just don't have the time to do the work, because we need to master the feelings of what we want to achieve in order to achieve it. So we have to believe and feel that we've already achieved it before we achieved it, as we continue trying to chip away at it in the little time that we have after all the stuff we got to do in this normie world. Okay, so from her book, Believe It, How to Go From Underestimated to Unstoppable.
In the chapter Believe You Are Enough, well, here's a quote, from an unknown person. The longest journey we take as human beings is the 18 inches from our head to our heart. And Otherworld Connections is about those 18 inches. If we don't stop the inner critic in time, we start to believe the lies. And once those lies take root as beliefs about ourselves, they can destroy our self-confidence and really affect all areas of our lives. For many of us, the relationship with our own inner critic is the most toxic relationship we'll ever be in. We need to take control of that voice. Our inner narrative, especially as it pertains to what we tell ourselves about ourselves, needs to be our biggest champion. Because at the end of the day, we are who we tell ourselves we are. When I think about my journey up to this point, I know this deep-rooted sense of not enoughness is why I've done things like stayed in some toxic relationships for far longer than I should have, and I worked so hard to change that. It's why in my past I kept certain friends around me, even though they would gossip or weren't always kind. I worked hard up to my own temperature and get new friends. Having set a low temperature in the area of abandonment is a way of understanding why I've been slow to fire toxic employees. I worked... This lady sounds like a narcissist, I'm sorry. She could well be, but the self-belief and faking it till you make it is, is like, can be healthy narcissism, right? I worked really hard to overcome and change that too. I try to catch my thoughts in time and take control of them. Doing these things, coupled with a whole lot of grace, grit, and God, has allowed me to be open to receiving incredible things in my life. I changed my perspective on my rosacea. I went from being insecure about it to raising my own temperature and believing it was a gift I was given. I think she means vibration when she says temperature. Because, all these mainstream kind of guru people are trying to have a point of difference to other people. It's all about the money to these people. I actually, truly, and fully believe my rosacea is beautiful. Oh, well, there we go. And a gift that could empower others. Changing what I believed about my rosacea and getting inspired to change how other women see their own beauty changed my entire life. It sparked the idea for my company, a makeup line that was quick and easy to use and looked like real skin on the days you felt like wearing it. And a makeup line with the bigger message that the real you is just as beautiful on the days you don't. And I truly believe this, and that's why it worked. Believing I was worthy of belonging on the shelves of Sephora and Ulta Beauty and on QVC is how I kept getting back up every time hearing another no. Every time hearing another no knocked me down. Deciding and believing I was worthy of creating a billion-dollar company is a huge part of how I was able to do it. Here we go. But as the saying goes, you didn't come this far to only come this far. As I write this, I still have a long way to go. Every day is a work in progress as I strive to continue raising the temperature of my thermostat on my own journey of becoming the person God made me to be. Well, that's fantastic, right? She found a way to turn her part of herself that was taking away her self-belief into something else. So, excellent example to back up this, feeling it before you got it. Before you got it, you got to feel that you already got it. Easier said than done. This is where I'm at. I got my goals. I got my, I got all that stuff. I continue to clarify my goals. Super important. And now I have to imagine them. And I realized that I never... Anyway, it's hard. It's hard to imagine success because we're not taught to do that, right? So just remember, if you feel about good things that haven't happened, feel good about things that haven't happened yet. Just remember, that is really important. So if you're like me and you really struggle to put yourself there in the feeling of success, and the feeling of like what it would be like to have all the stuff you need and all the stuff you want. And I mean, material and spiritual and emotional, right? I've got a tip, and this is what I'm doing. And it is hard for me, okay? Just so you know, I'm not trying to be a guru on this show. I'm learning as I go. Well, I'm learning, right? I'm on the journey too. Imagine you're drinking a Pepsi. Just one Pepsi. And when I think about Pepsi, I think about Suicidal Tendencies and that song. And Mike Muir of Suicidal Tendencies going absolutely nuts because all he wanted was one Pepsi. But there we go. My mind trails off. Sit down, picture yourself drinking a Pepsi or, eating a chocolate, whatever, some treat that you like. Purely in the moment, enjoying it. That's it. Can you do it? What happens when you do it? Why is no one else giving you this tip? Because everyone wants to sell you the solution when there isn't really the cure, as we uncover in this show, and we're only 7 episodes in. It's just an ongoing journey, an ongoing work, an ongoing effort. But you go to look about how to help yourself, how to get out of depression, how to get motivated, how to da-da-da. And you go on YouTube, and what are there? Titles. And titles are something to suck you in. And they say, this is how you do this. 7 ways to completely cure and heal yourself. And then you watch the interview for 2 hours, and then eventually they say, oh, look, you can't do anything about it. Well, you can. But as we're uncovering, it's the process, it's the journey, it's the work. And, whatever you're dealing with, it's probably not ever going away. You just got to fight. And they don't tell you that. You got to fight it. They want to tell you, mainly be kind to yourself, and mainly stick with my channel or with my information, because I've got the answer or the solution, the cure. And it speaks to that part of us that wants to be completely healed and fixed. But really, we've got to be hard on ourselves as well. We've got to be tough. We've got to fight. So, imagine drinking a Pepsi. Simple as that. And you're drinking the Pepsi, and imagine that it is like the advertisements on these adverts. That like the Pepsi, it symbolizes success, completion. The end of a goal, the end of a journey, the end of the day, right? That's success. And sit there in your mind and take a sip on the Pepsi and feel it on your mouth. Taste it. Enjoy it. Love it. See if you can do that. So that's what I do. That's what I'm working on. And yeah, it's pretty hard. I find it really tough. And that's just the tiny little start. And then you want to apply that to your goals, whatever they may be. Get some goals. Your goal can be drinking a Pepsi at the end of the day, and you can do that. See what happens. All right. Hive mind time, where we will put our minds together. We're on the same page. So in the early episodes, in these episodes of Otherworld Connections, we are, looking to be on the same page of, getting our minds right, getting on our goals. And then if we're all doing that, then we can work on something bigger than that together to help ourselves collectively and to help other people. So this is from the Visionary I Ching, a book of changes for intuitive decision making, excuse me, by Paul O'Brien. Organized discipline. I'll quickly read this. Discipline is symbolized by water under the earth, a vital resource that is available but hidden, requiring effort to access. This potential can be drawn upon in times of need. Once it is accessed and applied, great things can be accomplished with organized discipline. The most successful leader is not the one who triumphs on the battlefield, but the one able, through strength of discipline and inner power, to achieve conciliation without spilling blood. Likewise, in any large organization, key virtues are discipline and conscientiousness. The most effective team marches with a single purpose, a dedication to a lofty goal that is held dear by all. Even with an excess of external discipline, unpopular wars are seldom winnable. Let power be held in check by the willing acceptance of a common discipline and the submission to a higher authority for the common good. When life is in balance, only when the army is disciplined can the state be protected from disruptive outside forces. For this balance to be preserved, government must be steady and benevolent towards its own people. So if we look at the only true government, which is internal government of the individual, self-governance, we have to be disciplined and kind. So that's the whole thing. And then it says at the end, solidarity is essential for success. So there's that too. Solidarity is like, and if we're talking of the self, because it does work like that, law of correspondence, right? We need to give to ourselves, give of ourselves, have esteem for ourselves, have self-esteem. We need to stick up for ourselves. We need to stand as an individual. So there we go. It's about balance, being disciplined and kind. Because of that shadow, that pesky shadow, hey, sticks around. So you can't hate yourself for being bad or having all these problems, because that's kind of a part of life. So be disciplined, work on that, get on your goals. Yeah. So that's that. And we have 30 seconds left. But from the she, to be complete and whole, we must feel it. And if that's hard, remember, try imagining drinking a Pepsi. So have a can of Pepsi and succeed. Thanks so much for tuning in. I love you guys. We'll see you at the next one.